I'll make a prediction. Kamala Harris is running for president of the United States.
Prediction, Kamala Harris is not running for president of the United States. So then you have some comically unqualified weekend TV host running the Pentagon. And so, what do you expect? If you hire clowns, you're going to get a circus. And that's exactly what we have here.
Welcome back to Practically Political. I'm Kurt Bardella, joined as always by Ashley Davis and Dave Spencer. First, before we get started, please like, subscribe, YouTube, social media, all the things. If you think that we should have conversations where we can disagree without being disagreeable, this is definitely the podcast for you. We're coming up off what was the rescheduling of the White House Correspondents Dinner. We all remember what went down the first time. Thankfully, this one was without any incident. Only injury was really to the First Amendment itself. As expected, President Trump headlined the event and used his time to give a mature and wait, that's not it. No, he lambasted everybody in the room, singled out Caitlin Collins, and then proceeded to go on an insane social media rampage against everyone, as presidents tend to do. Dave, what's your just overall takeaway from the White House Correspondents' Dinner weekend? And is this something that we should even be doing anymore? Is this kind of run its course?
Well, just for the record, I want to say there was only one funny joke he made about RFK. So it was not a total bomb. Other than that, it was pretty bad, from calling, J.D. Pritzker a fat pig. I don't know what his obsession is with weight, because nobody's confusing the guy with Twiggy. So I don't, he has a great tailor, so you don't see it very often, but you watch him play golf. He is not a slim man, but putting that aside, was, once again, an attack on journalists, which is too bad, because, he accused journalists of, I think, not being patriotic, where the irony is that the most patriotic thing that one can do in this system is to hold people accountable, right? And that's what journalists do. They hold people accountable. So it was basically not a surprise. I think he ought to get some timing and perhaps material pointers from Barack Obama or Bill Clinton, but other than that, it was kind of a whole lot of nothing. Though I will give credit. Look, it's the first time that he showed up. He didn't come his whole first term. I think the dinner is, you could argue it's a waste of time, but presidents should show up. So as weird as this sounds, I would rather have him show up and bomb than not show up at all.
But I guess why should he show up, or why should this even happen anymore? I mean, I first of all, I think once a year is more than plenty, and twice a year is way too much. So obviously, as we know, I was at the first one, and thank God no one was shot. But I think that, listen, the whole point of this is making fun of people, and it's a roast, right? Obviously, I think when he does it, it's a little bit different than when Bush did it or Clinton did it or whoever, because it's more personal, especially with him, and he goes a little bit differently. But I don't know. I think the whole thing is probably past its prime, and I don't necessarily agree with you, Dave, that just because presidents used to show up, they have to show up now. I mean, maybe this is time for a transition. But look, it's once a year. All of us nerds in Washington end up going to this thing, and it is what it is.
Well, my point was...
But listen, I think he had... Wait, hold on a second. I think he had as horrible of a time as everyone else did. I mean, like, he even was like, this is the worst thing ever. So, and by the way, Dave, one more thing. You said that the media, you cannot say that a lot of the media sitting in that room does not have a bias against not liking Trump. Come on. I mean, this is like not unusual.
Actually. All I'm saying is that when reporters do their job, and look, and we have people that are biased on the right, people that are biased on the left. But my own point is that reporters are one of the best checks and balances we have against.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I agree with that.
Because they hold the system accountable. Obviously, some of them do it better than others. And my only other point is that I would say, look, if the president's not going to show up, don't have it. Because I agree with you. I think the sell by on this event is way past.
All right. Prediction time. Ashley, does Trump show up at next year's White House Correspondents' Dinner?
No.
Dave, prediction. Yes or no?
I would agree. No.
Okay.
I think this was his one thing. And obviously the first time almost ended in a true disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to prove that he could do it. And it's not fun for anybody.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens a year from now. It could be very different with the Democrat Congress, perhaps, but we'll see if we get there. We're now less than 100 days until the midterm elections. The environment is still pretty favorable for Democrats. A Fox News poll shows Democrats with a +7 advantage on a generic congressional ballot. That's the largest that they've had, ever. Obviously the on again, off again war with Iran has resulted in, gas prices once again going up, energy costs going up. Obviously a very inopportune time politically for Republicans on the trail who want to talk about anything but the war in Iran. Where do you think right now, as things stand, Ashley, are Democrats poised to take back at least one of the two houses of Congress, or has some of the things that they've had to overcome, like in Maine, with their issues there, with what we're seeing with the battle on the left and the far left in Michigan, is that going to have Democrats kind of snatch defeat from the jaws of victory?
So I think everyone's expecting right now, or not surprised. And by the way, I'm totally fine with this, is that if the House does flip, I mean, I do believe in divided government, which I've said, that, it's always a good thing for checks and balances. Also, I think it's really hard to be in the majority with all three branches, because especially when the votes are this close, that you really don't have, you're obviously held responsible for everything. And for House Republicans, it would be a little bit easier to be able to rail against, Hakeem Jeffries for a little while.
The obstructionist Democrats.
And so I do, and it will be fun watching him try to get this new group in order of the socialist side and then the regular side. But I'm still bullish on us keeping the Senate as of right now. My big prediction, though, is, get ready for it, I think that you have places like Michigan and Maine and maybe even New Hampshire that are Republican for Senate races, the Sununu in New Hampshire.
Yeah. And
then you have places like Alaska, Georgia stays Democrat, maybe Iowa, maybe I'm not giving Texas. I don't think that's reasonable. But Ohio, that go Republican. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're losing less seats, but I think that it could be this weird dynamic that you have Republicans and Dems seats and Dems and Republican seats.
Yeah. I can see that.
And Dave, I'm not ready. I think Susan's going to be, I still think right now it's going to be hard to beat Susan.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think? Where are we at right now? Less than 100 days out.
Well, I think the predictive markets, the last time I checked, have it about right. I think it's about a 78-80% chance the Dems will retake the House and 40 to 45% chance that they'll retake the Senate. And I think that's right. I think that what the Republicans have going for them is a huge fundraising advantage. Also, the redistricting in the House probably has gained them 8 to 10 seats that they wouldn't have had, particularly with the Democrat initiative failing in Virginia. And also, as so many MAGA people I talk to say, hey, the best thing we have going for us is that we're running against Democrats. And I really am concerned about this socialism stuff because, yes, it's only a few isolated seats, but it is absolutely perfect for fodder. And if you look at it compared to some of what was the Dems were saying was really extreme stuff with Marjorie Taylor Greene about the stolen elections and the Jewish space lasers and QAnon, yeah, those are batty theories, but they're not as close to home as some of this stuff with get rid of the cops, don't have prisons, get rid of the Senate, get rid of the Electoral College, all this stuff. And yeah, people can say, well, it's just those extreme, blue plus 40 districts, but it's infectious in a bad way. And I really think it could be the underrated factor if the Dems do worse than expected. So I think I agree with Ashley. I think right now the Senate is going to be a very heavy lift because Maine, which we'll talk about later, I'm glad they have a nominee, but Susan Collins is way ahead. I think she's raised 60 or 70 million, whereas the Dems have raised about 20. And she's very wily. She's the only remaining senator in a state that voted Democratic 3 consecutive presidential elections in a row. And that's not an accident. And a lot of the progressive stuff doesn't play well in Maine, which is an older, more traditional state. I'm also concerned about Michigan, the big primary on October 4th. And if Abdul El Sayed is the nominee, I think it's going to be a tough slog for Dems. So they could lose that seat, as Ashley points out. I think New Hampshire, I'm not as worried about it, but I think it's definitely in play. And I would say that for the Dems, the best seat, I think Texas is a stretch, but I think their best chance is actually in Iowa, where Josh Turk is running very well. Plus, Rob Sand is favored to take the governorship in Iowa, is 50th in GDP growth, because there's no group of people that Donald Trump has screwed over more than farmers.
Before you answer, Kurt, I just want to clarify something. So, Dave,
Yeah.
would you rather have Michigan stay blue? Like, if you're a Rockefeller Republican for real, Mike Rogers is like your exact candidate ever. So I'm assuming you would support Mike Rogers for Senate.
I actually would support Mike Rogers for Senate.
Yeah.
I would like the Democrats to take over the House, and they've done so. If you look at all the elections, with the exception of 2002, but that was after September 11th. So that's an outlier. But it's always, the House has always gone to the other party, and the Senate has usually stayed. So yes, I would definitely support Mike Rogers. Obviously, there's a no-brainer.
I'm going to tell him to call you for campaign donations.
No, I've met Mike.
1-800 Dave Spencer.
No, he's a good guy. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Democrats are on track to have a narrow majority in the House. I think it'll be bigger than the current majority Republicans have, which is narrow, incredibly narrow on a historic level. I think that redistricting is the difference of having an election night where Democrats take 25 seats and instead they're going to end up with maybe 10 or 12. I just think that the battlefield is too broad, and the enthusiasm gap here is still pretty meaningful, and that Democrats are more excited to vote than Republicans are right now. When you look at a granular level, Democrat candidates in the top 30 battleground districts, they are raising more money. Their campaigns are raising more money, far outpacing Republicans who are defending those seats by almost 2-1. And that just tells me that the enthusiasm on the ground is translating into real bona fide fundraising numbers from small dollar donors that Republicans just can't match right now. And you add on top of that a historically unpopular president going into a midterms, the cost of living, affordability issues still, number one, and number two, the Iran war exacerbating those things, inflation thereby also being exacerbated by that. And the only thing that Republicans have been able to say up to this point is blame Joe Biden. And I just don't think that message carries any weight right now with voters 2 years removed from the Biden administration, because that's not the promise that Republicans ran on in 24. They promised quick, decisive, definitive economic change for the American people. And that is not what they have delivered for them. And it's like Ashley said earlier, they have the reins of power of all the branches of government. Like, it doesn't work to blame others. It doesn't work to blame the Biden administration. It doesn't work to blame the radical left. It doesn't work to blame anyone when you have the House, the Senate, the White House, a majority of the branches, a majority of the judges, Supreme Court. Like, you have everything, and you still can't move the needle on affordability on the places that hit home the most. And I think that's the Achilles heel for the Republican Party. And you add to it this very, I think, visceral throw out the establishment, throw the bums out change mentality that is pervasive throughout the electorate.
And throughout the world, by the way.
Yeah. It's like the worst thing you could have right now next to your name isn't R or D, it's incumbent. And that's why I think at the end of the day, more incumbents will lose than will win. And if you're in the majority, that usually means you lose the majority in power. So that's my take on that.
I think that's right. I was just going to say quickly, though, I think it could happen. I'm not saying no, but a 10-12 majority for Jeffries would be pretty good. I mean, how many, say everyone wins, it's like the socialist side. I'm just using that as an example. It's 5 seats.
Mm-hmm.
Max. Yeah.
So if you have 10 to 12, then you're pretty good. I mean, you're obviously going to you don't really have any blue dogs anymore. Maybe 3.
Yeah.
I mean, same as ours. But I mean, so really that's not a bad majority.
Trump has changed his tune. Obviously it's
So
all
is Laura Loomer.
So is Laura Loomer.
Yeah, and Laura Loomer has been, I mean, she has really, there's a lot of examples where she's changed her tune, which I think is good. And as far as the House goes, since 2020, I think the biggest majority has been 5 seats. So Pelosi, her second 2 years, as well as Kevin McCarthy and Mike Johnson, they've been dealing with a raise with the majority. So 10 would be,
like a
surplus
these days.
That'd be like 50.
Yeah. Well, it's a show. We go from talking about the 2026 midterms and now a lot of conversation last week about 2028, particularly the DNC, Democratic National Committee, has been in the news, which is usually never a good thing when your party apparatus is really leading the story. We'll get to the drama there in a second, but they set the primary schedule for the 2028 cycle. And they're leading with, South Carolina will now be first, followed by Nevada, then New Hampshire, New Mexico, Michigan, and Virginia. That adding New Mexico and Virginia to the mix is actually a new thing, but South Carolina going first, and there's been kind of this friction, different demographics in the Democratic Party about who should go first. South Carolina Democrats being a much more heavily African-American leaning demographic, which this is good news for Kamala Harris, frankly, versus Nevada and New Mexico. We're seeing right now the impacted Latino vote swinging back to Democrats, and there are those in the party who felt that should be acknowledged, and those states should go first. Again, it's who knows what's going to happen in 2028. That's a far ways away. But as they line it up, it also is a much more establishment geared primary calendar than I think a lot of the progressive base is happy with.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think this helps the more establishment candidate.
Yeah,
Dave,
my big question is, if South Carolina hadn't wisely decided to keep Jim Clyburn's district, would they still make South Carolina first?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
I don't think, look what happened in 2020. He essentially got Biden.
He got Joe Biden elected.
And so
he sure did.
Fortunately, we don't have to deal with that because South Carolina made the right call. But I've always believed there should be a rotating primary system where every 4 years you have different states. Now, some states again, that are inconsequential because they're so blue or red, maybe you put one of those in, but it should be mostly states that that are more impactful. But that to me would be the fairest way to do it. But I know that fairness is not the number one criterion these days.
Now, there's 2 things I would say. The one thing that I think it was actually smart, this is not a criticism, is this $270,000 fine if your state goes out of order. So the committee put in, so if New Hampshire or anybody would go out of order, you get fined $270,000. Then also, I think you're not allowed to be on the stage, or you're not allowed to be part of the debate. So I think that was kind of smart because you need to have some sort of rails. You're either going to make the system work or you're not. But on the other side of things, I really agree. So if you're a governor, if you're Bashir, if you're, I don't know, even Josh Shapiro, let's just name some of them, you're going to make it through South Carolina and Nevada much more than you're going to make it through New Hampshire and somewhere else, I would think. So I think this keeps that moderate Democrat in the race a little bit longer than it would if you had some of these, like if California went first.
Here's my take. Unsurprisingly, I have a different take than everybody.
Okay, shocking.
I think that the Democratic Party organizationally, this is the stupidest process you could possibly imagine. All I care about as a Democrat is winning. And so what I look at it is the states that should play the largest role in selecting the Democratic nominee are the states that you need to win in order to win the general election. So the calendar should be Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Georgia, Arizona, like the swing states that we need to win in order to have a fairest chance of getting to 270 in the general election should also be the states that select the primary.
System, then you would change them every 4 years based on what the swing states are.
I would pick the 5 big swing states and go, that's the 5 first primaries that we have. Because if you can't win there, if you can't win over Democrats there, you have no business of being the nominee, because it won't matter what California Democrats think or New York Democrats think. It doesn't matter what New Hampshire Democrats think, or what South Carolina. South Carolina hasn't voted for a Democrat since Barack Obama, and they're not going to be voting for a Democrat for president going forward, by the way, demographically speaking. So why are we letting states that will not be in our electoral college column play any role in shaping who the nominee for president is? Like, that is just politically stupid.
Well, let me take a stab.
Was that reelect 2028 that they voted for Obama, or 2008, 2012, or was that 2008?
And 8.
I don't think they voted for me. North Carolina went for him in 2008, but I don't think South Carolina went for him either year. But we can look that up. But
let's look it up, because I want Kurt to be wrong.
Yeah, I know North Carolina. That's the last.
I want Kurt to be wrong.
But that was also the last year that they elected a Democratic senator in Kay Higgins. So hopefully Roy Cooper will.
That's true.
But what I was going to say is that, Kurt, in response to your theory, I think with South Carolina is a great, even though it's a very red state, it's a really good demographic representation of the Democratic Party. So because of the high Black population. And so I think that's the reason they use that state. But I agree with you that they should put the swing states in there, and you shouldn't have states, as I said before, that are obviously like California or New York or very blue states. So, and that's what they're doing. I mean, if you look at some of these states, there are a lot of the swing states are in there. So I'd give it a B plus. It's not perfect, but it's solid.
Yeah, I just go back to, I hate playing the demographic game. I don't care. This is holistically speaking, not like on a personal level, what Black Democrats in South Carolina think about the Democratic nominee for president, because their state isn't voting for us. It won't matter what they think, because the states aren't going to be voting for the general election nominee. I just think you got to go with where the win is, and where the win is are very defined swing states right now. And why, as a party, you wouldn't lean into that first and then let other states have their say. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, okay, Black Democrats are going to go pick, let's say, Kamala Harris and to win the South Carolina primary, which is, by the way, what would happen if that primary were to happen today. Well, that's great. Okay, well, how does that help us nationally? Because she can't win. She's not going to be president of the United States, but you're going to set her up to be the front runner.
I don't agree with you. I don't think that Clyburn would let Kamala be the front runner.
You don't think that I'm sorry, but you guys are insane if you don't think that.
Curry. Not even
yes,
close.
she is.
It doesn't.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And two, absolutely. If the South Carolina primary held today, she would win in a landslide.
But first of all, that's only one primary, and she would lose.
But it's the first one.
And she is not going to go through the humiliation of running again, having to raise the money. There is no way she's running again. So we'll have a primary bet right now.
I'll make a prediction. Kamala Harris is running for president of the United States.
Prediction: Kamala Harris is not running for president of the United States.
And she will win South Carolina.
That I agree with you, but she won't do well in the other part.
First of all, I hate to say it, but Kurt was right. Obama won North and South Carolina.
In 2008.
Yeah, I just don't think that. I just don't think, and this goes back to, well, I don't know. I'm not even going to go down this route, but I just don't think that Clyburn would have her be her win.
Yeah, I think he wants to win.
But I think she does run as of right now. I think she runs. But there was some poll out. I think it was a Fox poll again. And she's AOC was in first. It was AOC, then Newsom, then somebody else, and then somebody.
Name me the Democrat. Last. Name me the Democrat. And we're talking about the Black vote. That's why South Carolina's first. Name me the Black Democrat who's going to beat Kamala Harris in South Carolina.
Well, first of all,
do you think Clyburn wants to win now, or do you think he's just going to put to front a
are you
black
saying that
woman?
Clyburn is going to favor her just because she's black? Clyburn is a pragmatist. No, I don't think he would do that.
Do you think he's going to pick Andy Bashir or Gavin Newsom or AOC?
If he thinks
I could see her bringing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You guys are smoking something, but okay.
We'll see.
Okay. Well, you were right about South Carolina 2008, so maybe, Dave, we were wrong.
Right,
I'm
always right, Ashley. My predictions always come true. You'll see.
Wait. Oh my goodness. Yeah. What? We've got how many more weeks, Dave? 5 or 4? We may be on the
July
countdown.
27th. We got like 5 to 6 weeks left.
Yeah, we're doing 5
the
weeks.
countdown.
So September.
The final countdown.
Speaking of the
drop dead date.
Here we go. Drop dead date.
Was it Labor Day? Was it Labor Day?
September 7th.
Yes, okay. Labor Day is the deadline.
Labor Day is as late as it can be this year. September 1st this year. So Kurt has 6 more days to
have an extra 6 days. That's right.
True.
Okay.
One last thing here. Speaking of the DNC, they've also been in the headlines because 2 stories broke in the last 24 hours about how broke they are, and that the chairman, Ken Martin, apparently there was an HR complaint filed on him because he threw a stapler at an employee.
Sorry, that's not funny.
I just want to
totally don't do that from an HR perspective.
I just want to say to all those people who like to talk about women in power and their temperament, Ken Martin's throwing staplers at people because he can't handle the pressure of the job. But even the nugget that they leveraged their headquarters in DC to be able to qualify to get a $15 million loan. I mean, listen, I'm going to just go out there right now and tell you, like, Ken Martin needs to go. He is a disaster on every front. The job of the DNC chair is to raise money. Like that is your first, second, and third job. And he is incapable of doing that. He has lost the confidence of just about everybody, I feel like. And my prediction is that he does not survive as chair to the midterm elections. Like, I think that they're going to have to pull the plug on this guy.
I would agree with you. Dave? I remember when he first was chosen, he was on Rachel Maddow, and from his first interview, he was so uninspiring, so unimpressive. He seemed to be very lacking creativity. They should have chosen the guy from Wisconsin, Bill Wilkley. He would have done a much better job. I don't know what they were thinking, and the party is broke. And again, look, money means less and less these days, I think, in some ways, but it still is definitely a huge advantage. And that's one, as we said earlier in the show, that's one of the best things that the Republicans have going for them is money. And Ken Martin is largely responsible for that.
Ashley, what do you think? You're on mute.
I'm always a believer that money's not going to be an issue. Yes, Republicans are completely out. By the way, you were just wrong because he threw his cell phone, not a stapler. Who uses staplers anymore? Who uses staplers?
I could tell you what it was. When I worked for Senator Olympia Snow, she threw a stapler at me once, and so I just have that in my brain.
That was so long ago, Kurt.
Yeah, it was like 30 years ago. So what was I saying? Oh, I actually think when money needs to happen because of all this dark money, I think that if races are if they're going to be close, money will be there. So I mean, you don't think some of your major Democrat donors are going to write a check if they think, in October they can have a chance of winning back the Senate?
Not to the DNC. They'll write it elsewhere. We got coming up a great face-off with Dave and our dear friend Carrie Sheffield. So stick around for that. That's coming up next. Again, like, subscribe, all the things on social media. Ashley and I will be back with you next week. And now we're going to let Dave and Carrie take it from here. And just for the record, I disagree with everything Carrie just said.
Welcome back. It is great to have you here. I am thrilled to welcome our great friend Carrie Sheffield back for another episode of Face Off. For those of you who are wondering, she hasn't been with us for a while, and sadly that's because her father passed away. So before we get going, Carrie, first of all, our condolences to you for losing your father.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Practically Political community. It's just been a blessing to have so many people rally around and support my mom and my family at this time. And just putting politics aside, my mom is very happy because President Trump is going to be sending an official letter of condolence to my mom in honor of my dad. And it's because I was able to sing on July 4th from the main stage at the Great American State Fair. I led 1 hour of music and prayer and speeches for July 4th, which is, like the Super Bowl. But it happened just 5 days after my dad passed away on June 29th. And so at the very end of the program, I gave a little tribute to my dad. And then we sang Amazing Grace. And while I was speaking and while we were singing, they had jets flying over. So it was like this epic jet farewell to my dad. And it was so perfect. And, it was people who know the show, I had a very complex relationship with my dad. And so, but one thing we totally agreed on, my dad and I, is that we both loved America. And so it was just the perfect tribute for him.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Well, as you would say, let's get right to it. As you know, our president made his first ever appearance at the White House Correspondents Dinner. And it was interestingly a colorful affair. But what were your thoughts?
Well, I want to point out the backdrop of this, which is that President Trump and the First Lady combined have won tens of millions of dollars in settlements and court legal agreements against the media. And so I really think, not to mention an assassination attempt at the first attempt of his speech.
Yes, but how did he do?
Well, I'm just saying that's the backdrop of which all the liberal media is hating his speech. Was like, give the man a break. He was the bigger person to even show up at all. So I thought it was hilarious. I thought, he can give just as well as he takes. It was funny. I mean, look, I don't agree with everything every comedian says or every speech or whatnot. But overall, again, he is the bigger person. I thought it was a fun night. I thought it was hilarious. And credit to the press. It was nice to have both parties in the room.
Well, I think as far as the lawsuits go, that's one of the greatest examples of acquiescence and people basically trying to buy their way out of it. None of those cases, particularly the ABC one, any serious lawyer gave more than a 1% chance of winning. But putting that aside, I think he did tell one funny joke about RFK, as I mentioned, but overall it fell flat. And there was the usual invective and getting personal and the liberal media. And really, when you think about it, he's always attacking the media, and the media always has a liberal bias, but that's always what he says. But I think the media does a very good thing, and many of them hold him accountable. We talked about this in the last segment. And that's the media's most important job. And obviously, when someone has authoritarian tendencies, that's the last thing they want is people lifting up the stones. So we will see what happens. But I also want to check back with you with the Iran war, because last time we were here, I asked you, and I never really got an answer, what is in one area that we were better off before the war or after now than when the war started. And if you look at everything from our running out of ammunition to Iran not moving despite the latest fusillade, and you look at energy prices going back up, the approval rating is a record low with the American people. Still no hint of any strategy. Mike Walls was on Meet the Press yesterday, and he couldn't even really give a good reason for the war, which I don't blame him because none has been articulated. So are you still a supporter of it? Do you honestly think we're better off now than we were on February 28 when this whole war of choice started?
Well, I've said it many times. This was not a war of choice. This was a response to the Iranian aggression from October 2023. We can disagree on this, Dave, but that's the reality. Anyway, I'll give you several responses. One that I think is very timely right now is that the Sunni nations are coalescing behind the Shiite regional hegemonic aspirations of Iran, because you're seeing this with the Saudis and a nuclear deal potentially being brokered. And one of the requirements of that is that they enter the Abraham Accords. And that I think is very positive, because
but there's no chance that's going to happen, Carrie. They have said we are not entering the Abraham Accords until there's a Palestinian state. And the chances for that are beyond infinitesimal right now. And it's so typical of Trump. There's a deal on the table and he's like, it gets criticized because it could pave the way for Saudi Arabia getting a nuclear weapon. So he's like, oh, never mind. He throws in a condition that he knows is never going to get met. Come on, wouldn't you at least acknowledge that?
Look, I think we both will never say never under Trump. So let's just agree on that also. But, and then there's the fact that...
Do you agree that it's very unlikely at best that the Saudis are going to enter the Abraham Accords given the current state of things in Israel? Will you at least acknowledge that?
I think it's definitely a sticking point for them. But if you look at the parties that have already entered the Abraham Accords, this is significant. This is why the Abraham Accords are a significant, it's a peace deal that is historic. And so I think the momentum, that's one result that's been positive, just overall, the Sunni unity and in some ways rallying behind Israel and saying, hey, you can't just have your terrorist proxies, Iran, be financed throughout the region. I think it's been a good reset of that. I think there's also been, as Trump has said, the nuclear capabilities of the Iranian regime have been decimated. They have been obliterated, basically. The Iranian military has been decimated. The United States controls the Strait of Hormuz. So strategically, the United States is in a much better position.
Okay, well, first of all the nations that joined the Abraham Accords, that was before October 7th, 2023. And I would have a hard time believing they would join now. But putting that aside, if you look at the goals of the war, which were, unconditional surrender, whatever, regime change, knocking out the proxies, knocking out Iran's military capability, eliminating their nuclear program. And by the way, let me just say, when Jimmy Carter was dealing with the whole hostage crisis, the reason that presidents in the past, the main reason they have not gone after Iran is the Strait of Hormuz, because of the calamity that could have for the world economy. And the Trump administration, how could that happen? Nobody knew that was going to happen. And by the way, we do not control it. They control it. And the Trump administration has acknowledged that. And they would say they would take significant military force for us to control it. As far as the army being decimated, funny thing is, well, if that's the case, they sure were able to rebuild quickly because they fought back very well during this last fusillade. In fact, killing some more of our service members. The nuclear program is not decimated. They have a huge amount of 60% enriched uranium, which again, the administration has acknowledged. They're stronger than ever. And the Arab allies are now on their feet because of their ability to threaten them. So everything is considerably worse off. But again, when you don't have a strategy, when you don't have an end game, when you don't consult the American people or your allies or Congress, this is what you get. When war plans go before Congress, they are analyzed and they are fine-tuned. That's one of the reasons Congress is there, is to advise. Would you at least acknowledge that?
Well, Congress has repeatedly chosen to vote in favor, essentially, of this. They haven't stopped him. They haven't had a coherent action.
They weren't consulted initially, though.
So I think, what?
They weren't consulted initially the way they are on whatever you want to say about the Iraq war. George Bush did it the proper way. He had a vote. He went to Congress. That's the way we used to do it. I thought Congress was the one that has the power to declare war. At least that's the last time I checked.
Well, again, Iran was the one who declared war here. And Iran has been at war with the United States for decades. And that's, I think, what they're really hoping the Iranians, and also let's point out that the Iranians, and that's what I find really upsetting by, these folks who go on, I saw Chuck Hagel over the weekend on Christiane Amanpour's program, just really like attacking Trump and attacking America. And I'm like, last time I checked, you were a U.S. senator and you ran defense for America. Why are you essentially basically giving Iranian talking points? It was really upsetting to me. I was just like, what kind of a patriot are you? Like, what about the fact that Iran they're the ones who have violated the agreement? There was a ceasefire, and who violated that? It was the Iranians. The Iranians have not been acting in good faith. So like, at what point will the Chuck Hagel, never Trump Republicans and the Democrats, for once, instead of attacking Trump and America, actually point out the evil doing of the Iranian regime. The guy who just Trump took out, to the very end, he was saying death to America. Like that's what's so strange here. It's just like you'd rather attack Trump than the actual like insane ideology that is motivating Iran.
Okay.
That's what's
all right.
like,
First of all, they've been saying death to America for 47 years. But let's go back and get some historical perspective here. In 2018, Trump withdrew from the JCPOA. It was an agreement that we'd made. His staff told him they were complying, but because Obama did it, we had to get out of it. So we were the one that broke our word. Then we were negotiating, trying to reach a deal, and then we attacked them on February 28th. So we were the ones that broke the terms. I mean, that 2018 agreement, again, it was negotiated by people that are actually diplomats, not Steve Witkoff, who doesn't know his rear end from his elbow when it comes to this stuff. It took 20 months, and overall, it was a solid deal. You know, the weaknesses were that it didn't address the ballistic missiles and that it didn't go out far enough, and those were true weaknesses. But we had inspectors on the ground. We have none of that right now. And by the way, this new regime, which Trump has put in place, is far more open to a nuclear weapon. The old supreme leader, the word from inside and out, our intelligence, what was coming from Iran, that he was hesitant to pursue a nuclear weapon. He wanted just the leverage that pursuing a nuclear weapon would give them. So, you know, it's just a bleep show. Then you have some, you know, comically unqualified weekend TV host running the Pentagon. And so, you know, what do you expect? If you have a bunch of clowns, if you hire clowns, you're going to get a circus. And that's exactly what we have here. But I'll give you the last word.
Trump was elected because the career bureaucrats who make their living off of the backs of taxpayers have done an awful job. And the fact that Trump is resetting the entire Middle East and the entire world order, that's exactly what he was elected to do. And so until the Chuck Hagels of the world and the Democrats understand that Trump is doing exactly what he was elected to do, they're going to keep losing. And sure, it is true that, you know, George W. Bush, the Iraq War was very unpopular. This is a different situation. We don't have boots on the ground. We're not. Trump said, again, it was very different in his speech announcing the American response to October 2023. He said, this is an opening for the Iranian people to take your freedom, for you to have the regime change. And that's the different approach compared to Bush.
Well, on a separate note, I would just say when J.D. Vance endorsed Donald Trump, do you remember what he wrote? Well, I'll refresh your memory. This is the one president who's not going to get us into forever wars. This is the one president who didn't start a war during his administration. And so I think I totally disagree with you. He was elected to bring prices down. He was elected to deal with the border. He was elected precisely because he had not gotten us into war. And so this idea also of redoing the Middle East order.
Trump didn't start anything. Iran started this.
This is so lame when you say Iran. It was like Saddam Hussein. They didn't threaten to attack us. They didn't attack us. A few isolated terror incidents and proxies in other country. That is not war. That is not starting a war, Carrie. So you can say all you want that they started it, but no one takes that seriously. You know, we started it without a plan, and now we're living with the consequences, unfortunately. But I did want to touch on one last thing because we're running out of time, and that was Trump's speech about voting, because I think that one of the things I resent most is his attacking the integrity of our voting system, his refusing to acknowledge the peaceful transfer of power, and that speech. None of the stuff that he said was substantiated. To me, I thought the most comical thing was he said that China got all this data on hundreds of millions of voters. That data are publicly available. You or I could get that data. And so it's all, he just can't get past 2020 and the fact that he lost. And I'm hoping that you're still not supporting the Save America Act. But what were your thoughts on the speech?
I thought it was a great speech. I thought it was very timely given the news that we saw out of Pennsylvania, for example, where you had thousands of illegal immigrants and the governor just
Are you talking about Jersey, New Jersey? It was 400. It wasn't thousands.
Well, no, it was Pennsylvania and New Jersey. It was both, actually.
It was not thousands. It was several hundred.
No, it was on the voting rolls. So there's a difference between being on the voting rolls and then actually voting. So that's what I'm talking about. There are thousands
400 voted though
in New Jersey, but again, how do we know that's actually true, Dave? If they told us that it wasn't true at all,
no.
How do we know, Dave?
Well,
how do we know that when you have?
Hold on, may I answer the question? This gets back to one simple point. There has never been any voter fraud, illegal immigrants voting, any of this stuff that has ever affected the outcome of an election. And by the way, New Jersey came up, the governor volunteered this because this is what we do. We constantly try to improve our voting system. We don't disparage it. And Chris Krabs, who was the chief officer in the first Trump administration, said that 2020 was the safest and most secure election that we'd ever have, for which he was promptly fired. And there's never been any indication that having a few hundred illegal immigrants on the voting rolls or voting is definitely wrong. And it was pointed out, but it has never come close to affecting the outcome of an election. And that is the point.
Well, going back to the 1960s, you remember the presidential election with Nixon and Kennedy. There were reports that Kennedy basically knew there was rampant voter fraud and that Nixon just basically chose not to fight it. And that could have been determinative. Do you agree that could have been determinative, Dave? So I'm just saying, this is not something like some random Tim and Hat problem in America. And then in terms of buying votes or influencing the way people vote and how they vote in ways that are unfair or not democratic, lowercase d, this is a problem. It really is. So I agree with you. We should be, in the same way that I just said, we need to be supporting America instead of supporting Iran. We should be supporting our election process. But yeah, we should have integrity and we should not be afraid to call out when there are questions being raised.
Absolutely. And well, first of all, the fact you have to go back to 1960 for an episode.
I'm just saying it's an ongoing, pervasive problem. That's my point.
No, and by the way, I agree. And there were people that said Nixon should challenge the election, just like they felt that Al Gore should have done more in 2000. But both of them, unlike Trump, said, you know what, we need to put the good of the country first. And they had stronger cases. So the only way that people are going to lose faith in our elections is if politicians crap on them so much that they start to lose faith. And that's what worries me about what Trump is doing. And there have been minor episodes. Yeah, in Texas, they tried to find voter fraud and they found one or two cases. Same thing in Pennsylvania. The main reason it doesn't exist is because the cost-benefit ratio isn't there. Thousands of dollars of fines, years in prison for changing one vote. There's not really an incentive to do it. So I'm just hoping that as we get close to what's a very important midterm election, that there won't be shenanigans tried on the Republican side in terms of some of the stuff that Trump can do. So fingers crossed. I hope you at least agree with me on that.
I agree. I want fair, safe elections. I'm
Excellent.
With you there.
All right. On that harmonious note, we will draw to a close. I always enjoy debating with my good friend Carrie, and I always look forward to doing it more because it's very enjoyable. So thanks to her for coming back. Again, our condolences are with you, with your father. I'm so glad he's being honored by the president. That's a wonderful thing for Trump to do. And All of you, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on Practically Political.